Let's speak to John Burnett. He's a strategist for the Republican Party. He joins us now from New York. John, thank you so much for your time. Tell me, how many people in the Republican Party do you think understand what it's like to be a black man in the United States and the dangers that that poses just for having a black skin?
Well, I think, thanks for having me. I think that this is not related to party. We've seen instances, as recent as the Amy Cooper situation in Central Park, and she's a liberal. So so this is really not about Democrat or Republican. It's really about equal rights, equal protection under the law, whether it's Minneapolis or New York City or anywhere in America. We need to have an honest discussion with law enforcement. And I think the number one solution that needs to take place, as evident as regards to what happened to George Floyd. When you look at it, yes, it was one officer, but there were 3 other officers that should have stepped in and said, okay, this is way too much. So we need to not only have the society, the community put pressure on the police to actually be more fair in their interactions with people of color, but we need to make sure we hold them accountable to actually police themselves.
John, I remember speaking to you last week, and we spoke to you last week as a political activist, as a person almost speaking on behalf of people of color. The thing is, you're also a Republican strategist, and people have said that what's happening is also a problem created by the Republican Party. I completely understand that you're saying that it's a problem for all political parties in the United States. But yet, tell me, how many senior Republican leaders do you know, and if you could name them, that would be fantastic, who have spoken out in the past week and said, yes, I understand what people are angry about. I understand why people of color are upset and why they're out on the streets. How many?
Well, look, it's too many to name. In fact, I live in New York, and the New York GOP state chairman actually put out a statement calling for unity, calling for reforms. We've seen even elected officials, high-profile officials like Senator Tim Scott. So I think that we can actually push back on that narrative and really use this as an opportunity to come together, not actually continue the political divide, but actually look at it and say, you know what, whether you're Republican or Democrat, this actually impacts the entire electorate. You know, I've seen people actually reach far back as 1994 with respect to then Vice President Biden with respect to the 1994 crime bill. And overall law enforcement. So, there's issues and blame to be casted on both sides, but that's not going to actually bring about a remedy here. We need to actually talk about wholesale reform, both Republican and Democrat, white, black, all spectrums of our electorate and our society to come together to say, you know what, we need to make sure that we have enforcement and hold all officers accountable for violations of civil rights.
Okay, well, what do you make of the relative silence of President Trump? As far as I know, and correct me if I'm wrong, please, I think the only time that he's spoken sort of directly to the American people from a podium was after the SpaceX launch on Saturday. And then there was that, I heard the soundbite, and I think he was probably talking to a pool of media people outside the White House, and it appeared kind of crass the way he said, MAGA loves the blacks. I mean, what's going on with the president? Why isn't he talking? Why isn't he saying the words that you're saying, that let's work this out together?
There is a part of that speech where he talked about unity, where he talked about opportunity, and he talked about equality for all. And I'll go as far as to say this. I do wish that either today or tomorrow that there is a speech, not from the lawn of the White House, not from a particular room, but the Oval Office, the office of power that represents the free world, and really talk about equality, really talk about reforms, not because it's an election year, because it's the right thing to do. And I do think that he will do it. It should have been done already, but I do think that he will do it to try to call for unity. Even those that will still reject the message, I think it's the appropriate thing to do.
John, tell me, do you have any sons? Do you have any brothers or sisters who have any sons? What do their fathers tell those sons about interacting with white police officers in your country?
Well, I have a daughter, and I tell her the same things that many black parents of young black boys. They actually counsel them. You know, I'm the youngest of seven. I was the tiebreaker. I was 4 boys and 3 girls. Growing up in Brooklyn and being raised in Queens. You know, the thing is that and I also have friends who are part of law enforcement at the state level as well as NYPD. And they've even given me tactics that I share with family and friends. You know, when the officer's approaching the car, whether white or black officer, right, there's a certain level of concern. I won't say fear, but a certain level of concern. Do whatever is possible to diffuse the situation. I'll give you an example. If it's nighttime, when I'm pulled over, or if I'm pulled over, I turn on the light in the car. I have my wallet on the dashboard and hands at 10 and 2. Automatically, that's conveying a safety environment for the officer, right? And then I'm not engaging into a hostile conversation. I'm not making accusations. We're having just a simple conversation. The moment things become hostile, then the level of concern is elevated on both ends, and it can only lead to a downward spiral. So I recommend on both sides that there's responsibility and there's accountability into that situation, but there needs to be critical thinking on both sides to make sure that the situation doesn't get out of hand really fast.
John, a pleasure again hearing from you. John Burnett, strategist for the Republican Party in New York. Take care, John.